All right, it's time to film my March wrap up, and I'm chilly, so I'm keeping a hoodie on. And if I'm being honest, it wasn't as good of a reading month as I wanted. I didn't have any 5 stars other than a reread, which just makes me sad. But I'm excited to figure out how my bracket turned out because I'm going to, at the end of this, talk that out with you guys because I feel like everything's very close. There are definitely upsets. So we're going to start off like I normally do in my wrap-ups, where I will break down the books I read into certain category recommendations. There'll be timestamps down below. There will be links to the books from bookshop.org in case you want to purchase them from an independent bookstore. I do receive a small commission from that if you do go that route, but it's not more expensive for you. And let's go. I think I read, according to this list, 9 books, which is pretty good. One of them was an audiobook, and like the page count is about this for the physical reading because I don't tend to count the audiobook pages when I'm tracking reading because it's like a different allocation of time when I'm like planning things. But it was over 4,000 pages, which is a lot. That's more than I want to read, but you guys saw my April TBR. I'm gonna have to do way better than this if I want to read all the books on my April TBR. But let's talk about what I did read, though, because I did read a lot of things, as you can see. We're going to start with military fantasy, because I read a fair bit and a wide range of military fantasy. We'll start with the disappointment. We'll start with The Burning God. I have a review for the whole series, spoiler-free. I don't talk about plot at all. I talk about execution of certain things, but I don't talk about it. I don't think you can guess what happens in the series from that review, but if you wanted to know, is this a series for me? Is it worth the 1,800 pages? You can see my personal journey through the series, which I think is an unpopular opinion, although a lot of my friends have similar opinions. But when you look on Goodreads, The Burning God has received really good reviews. So also don't let me deter you, but on further reflection, this is like at most a 2.5-star read. I have presumably a star rating here. It was just, it was a book that I should have DNF'd. It's really the honest truth of it, is like there was a point where I wanted to put it down and I really should have. Reading on was not more beneficial to me than just going online and reading like spoilers of how it ended for me. So it was a bummer because it's a really long book. It's like the second longest book I read this month or something like that. But I didn't love the execution of the ending. I actually like the ending, but I don't like the journey I took to get there. Even, understanding like the historical moment it's based off of, it didn't work for me. And all of those reasons are in a video that you can look at if you so desire. But the next one I will talk about is Dead House Gates. And I'll just put an image up because these are always so shiny. But I finished that and it's long, right? These are really long books. They take me an entire month to read while I read other things because they're dense for me. I cannot really binge it out. Like when I was even binging it, I maybe read 80 or 100 pages, and that's when I was at the like final stretch of the book and I was like, what's happening? And what I think is that these books have so much setup. There's so much being put into it. At times it does feel a little slow, but it never felt like a book that would never end. Like I never felt like, okay, I'm ready for the end now. That wasn't my experience. And when you get to the end, there's so much payoff. I suddenly had all of these emotions for people that I didn't know I had acquired emotions for. And I thought that was really interesting. Like a character I really cared about didn't have a point of view. And I was so into the arc of that character. So still about the same like experience for me. Like I think I'm giving it 4 stars. I'm going to make a spoiler-free review and I'm going to have a spoiler vlog. So those are probably going to be next weekend. You'll probably see them. If they're not next weekend, it will happen. I just haven't filmed them yet because I've been out of town. But I had a great time. So Gardens of the Moon, if you didn't see that review, it kind of went from like a 4.5 to a 3 to a 4-star read throughout my whole experience. It was an inconsistently paced book for me, but I generally really loved the payoff. This was a solid 4-star read for me the entire time. And keeping in mind that military fantasy is not my bread and butter. It is not my thing. And I thought this was done really well. Sometimes it was exhausting. I mean, showing the horrors of war is an exhausting thing to read. But like I said, the payoff and like how everything is set up, and while you're in the setup, you're like, why are we talking about this? I am so confused. But for me, it felt like there was payoff and I really enjoyed how it ended. I have some some complaints and concerns and questions that I'm sure might be answered later in the series, but that will be talked about in the spoiler vlog. So really happy, 2 out of 10. I think that means what? I'm like 20% of the way through Malazan in terms of books, not in terms of pages, because I was at a bookstore recently and I saw how big the mass market paperbacks get, and they get chonky. So, but probably my favorite military fantasy of the month. But the next one, I was actually A, surprised that it was military fantasy, and B, really into it, especially since it's a young adult book, and that's The Gilded Ones. I went into this because it was for Space Sirens Book Club, so I had to read it. It was what was voted for, and I was interested in it. But I probably would not have picked it up right now if it weren't for the book club. And I'm glad I did, because A, it has one of my favorite tropes, which like was so exciting to me. I do talk about it in like a young adult recommendations video, so if you want to hear more about specifics for it, I will direct you to that video, and also the video where I just talk about the differences that I associate with the young adult and adult publishing and things like that. But this had such great found family feelings. If you don't know, this follows a girl who ends up having to kind of join a female military society because of how she was born and the nature of the society. And watching her form these connections, watching her learn about the state of politics and how the world is different than what she learned in her village, I thought was really interesting. I thought the protagonist is really smart, which I personally really value in a teenage protagonist. Like, she's still a teenager. But I sometimes think teenagers are like written in a way where they really do throw out common sense, and like sometimes we did, right? When I was a teenager, I wasn't always great, but she does make intuitive leaps that I thought made sense, and I really liked that. My biggest issue is the ending, which is fine. There's nothing bad about it, but I didn't really like I felt like this was a moment where our character kind of lost some of their thinking abilities. Like the way they were perceiving the ending, I thought was a little naive. And we'll see what happens in the following books, because this is something where like maybe the ending was just a moment in time and I will feel better about it once we're in the next books, because I don't know, I didn't feel like the characters did with the ending. And I'm excited to talk about this more in the Space Sirens Book Club, which we do have a date. I'll have it on the screen because I'm forgetting right now, and I'm excited to talk about it and see if other people had similar feelings to me about the ending, because I didn't hate it. But it was definitely like, this would have been a 4.5-star read if it weren't for the ending. But it's a solid 4-star read, and I had a really good time. So that was military fantasy, which I normally don't read, but that happened. Let's talk about, just while we're on fantasy, the other fantasy books I have read. And actually, I have it over here, I think. I finished my reread of Mistborn. I have a Mistborn spoiler gush. It's a reread. It's like my 4th reread. It's a 5-star. It's a 5-star book. I love it. I love Vin so much. I think something that I noticed more as I'm rereading this series as a whole that I didn't really I connected with but didn't have words for back when I read this as a high schooler and a college student is the anxiety representation. At least I think I'm understanding my own relationship with anxiety, and then seeing it in Vin has been a really interesting experience as I've been reading, because I don't think until the last couple years I really understood my relationship with anxiety and other parts of my mental health. So seeing it in Vin, it's been amazing. And also it's just a great story, and it's so cozy and comfy. Currently rereading Well of Ascension, just great. I mean, yeah, I have a spoiler gush review. I've read it 4 times. I recommend the book. There are definitely people who maybe won't love it as much as me, and that's okay, but I think it's a solid story. I really like the magic. I really like the characters. Am I biased? Probably, but I think we all are when it comes to our favorite books, and the favorite books earned their place for a reason. Next one I'll talk about was kind of a little bit of a disappointment, again because of the ending, and I'm still trying to unpack my thoughts, but this is Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon Ha Lee. I still really liked the story, and we're reading it for my book club Patreon, so we're discussing this in a couple weeks, and I'm really excited because I need some people to help me unpack my thoughts here. But Yoon Ha Lee, if you don't know, is like my favorite, one of my top favorite sci-fi authors, has written one of my favorite sci-fi series ever in Machineries of Empire. I love their imagination. I love their brain. And this still had great stuff in it. I think actually the stuff that I didn't like was purely the ending. And I was buddy reading this with my friend Jocelyn, and we were talking about how these are very different characters than in Machineries of Empire, because she has also read that trilogy, and how these are softer characters. Now, I also really love that this is a non-binary main character in Jebi. Really love that. I love that Jebi's an artist. I don't think we get enough good artist representation in books. And I love the dragon. I can't remember their name. I know it means storm. I love the dragon. So I love the dragon. I love Jebi. I like the magic system. I like that it's based on a historical 20th century time period. It's, I think, based off the Korean country being invaded by Japan. I think it's very tied to that. Except I think I didn't like that once we got to the ending of the book. But also there are other things about the ending of the book that were just like weird even for Yoon Ha Lee. Like, I don't know. Especially since this is a standalone. I think I haven't really committed to my star rating. It's a 3.5 or 4 star, which is why like I'm a little disappointed just because that's not a bad rating. That's still a good, great book. But Machineries of Empire is like a 5-star series for me. So, you know, I was really hoping I'd love it, but it was just okay. Like, it was more than just okay. Like, I had a really good time, but like I've talked about in other videos, I'm like an ending person, and the ending of this was just like so weird. The cats are hissing on the bed because they can't be friends. The next one I'm going to talk about is Tower of Swallows, the 4th book in the novel set, the 6th book in the Witcher series. And, oh boy. Well, first, tangent, there is a tweet. Season 2 of The Witcher is happening. I'm so excited. Like, I just want you guys to know that I'm so excited for the Witcher TV show to keep going. Like, I love season 1. I started Lady of the Lake. It feels like a chore, but I'm at this point, I want to finish it. It actually has started off kind of interesting. But what I think is so weird, besides the whole where's Geralt, which is a complaint that I will say for every book. Like, Geralt was in like 40% of this book, which is like, fine, whatever. But the narrative structure he chooses to use to tell his story changes from chapter to chapter, and I don't think adds much more than just confusion for me at times. Like, it's cool, and as someone who loves when narrative structures get weird, like, I do like that. That's actually a thing that normally will help bring me towards your book. Like, there's a series in fantasy called Ruin of Kings that everyone always talks about how confusing the storytelling is, and like, I want to read it for that reason. But this just felt, is obfuscated the right word? I don't know. Just needlessly convoluted storytelling. Like I said, each chapter was a little different in how they did it, and I don't know if that's because when he writes his books, he maybe makes each chapter sort of a short story, but not really. I don't know. It was weird. And once again, the ending just kind of ended. Like, none of these books in the novel set have had endings that have been remotely satisfying for me. Like, remotely. They just end. I guess this one you can say that it did end at an appropriate point. But I don't know. It's something that I really probably won't know my complete opinion till I have finished the novel set. I'm like really excited to read the short stories, even though I've not actually looked at reviews, so I don't know if they're on par with the original short story set. But regardless, I finished it. It was fine. It actually took me longer to consume in audio than Fires of Heaven, which does not say much. I mean, Fires of Heaven was like a 35-hour audiobook, and this was like 16 hours, and I just was dragging my feet. Like, I was so confused and uninterested. Like, there was a whole 45 minutes discussing the economy of a country that I don't remember the name of, and I don't care. Like, I didn't care. Like, I was just like, why? Why is this here? It was also like 70% of the way through the book. Like, this wasn't like at the start of the book setting something up. It was so weird. He makes such weird narrative choices. Some of them I can get behind, and some of them I'm just like, this was a choice. But those are all the fantasy books. I'm going to briefly mention a literary fiction book, and this is Deacon King Kong. I read this with my book club. I said in a Friday Reads how I didn't get on with it for a couple reasons. I thought it was 80 pages too long. And I don't like, so it's called Deacon King Kong. That's the main character in this community. I think it's Brooklyn in the late 60s. I love the community. I love the descriptions of the community and the tensions there, and not even just the tensions, just the relationships. I loved the community. I really liked the writing. Even when it gets very literary fiction where he's like randomly discussing ants walking through a building, and there's this thing about cheese. There's a weird mystery. There's a lot I really liked, but I didn't like the Deacon, the main character. I have a lot of issues with him, how he's represented, the ending of his story. Like, mainly because of the tone. This is a very, like, funny story most of the time. But his character is kind of a really sad representation of what happens when a society lets you down. And it was so disjointed for me. Like, having this character and then having this tone, it didn't work for me. I think it worked for most of the people in my book club, but for me, it didn't work. And then the ending, like, this was a 3.5-star read till the ending. I didn't like it. I can't talk about it spoiler free, but I've talked about it in my Discord, and most people, like, agree with me. But, like, everyone in my book club did not see why I had an issue with the ending, but I think it romanticizes something that I don't like to have romanticized in my book. And I think it really is being romanticized. Because A, the name of the chapter in which this happened is called Beautiful, and everyone in my book club thought it was a beautiful ending. And I'm like, no, this is not. This is incredibly sad. This is incredibly sad, and it's not beautiful. I don't like it. So I think that book in general is just like, I'm glad I read it because it was quality, but it was too long, and I do have issues with the tone and the theme. Like, it didn't work for me with our focus being on Sportcoat, the Deacon of the community, our linchpin, the thing that connects everything in the story. But there was a lot of good. Like, there's like some scenes that are comical, like Roadrunner and Coyote scenes, like from Looney Tunes. So it was such a weird experience and book club discussion for me, because I just felt like I was on my island and, like, I didn't understand. All right, time to talk about the 2 sci-fi books that I read this month. The first one I read way long ago. Like, I totally almost forgot this was the same month. My buddy read this with my friend R, who has a channel, This Cubed, and it's Winter's Orbit. I have a review for this, so you can go check it out. In the review, I talk about how it's like a mixed experience for me, but I largely had a good time. Gave it 4 stars. I think this is a very good adult sci-fi for people who are scared of adult sci-fi. I think it's a book that can prove to you that there is a space in adult sci-fi for people who don't want all the technical jargon, do not want all the high-level politics. Like, if you don't want that type of density, this is a story about 2 disaster politicians who are in a marriage of convenience, who are also kind of connected to the fate of their countries, and they have to know each other, like get to know each other and figure things out. And I had a fun time. I think I enjoyed the romance parts of this way more than the sci-fi parts of it, and I don't know if that's because I'm typically more of a sci-fi reader and I didn't like the execution, or if I just, like, loved the romance so much that I was just annoyed when I was taken away from it. I'm unsure. I talk about it more in the review if you want to hear more thoughts, but this was one that I think my Patreons voted for me to read, so I'm glad that they did. And like I said, there's a review in the cards. And the last one was one of the last books I read this month, and that's Machine Hood, and the review just went up the weekend before you're seeing this video. I read it after The Burning God, and it just made me feel good because it was a page turner. It was action-packed. I was constantly, like, wanting to read it. It's the story... So this came out actually March 3rd, so it's a very new release. It's the story of Welga, who was a bodyguard, and she's about to retire because in this society, bodyguarding is more of, like, a social media gig, and so you have to look a certain way, and she's going to be 35, so, you know, obviously can't look good anymore. But right when she's about to retire, there's this big attack, and then they're suddenly in the mystery of the attack and really want to solve it, and it has to do with artificial intelligence. It also has to do with, like, labor laws. It takes place in 2090, and I just think the imagination of this world was done so well. I have some issues that I talk about in the review about maybe some of the execution of that world building, but I love the world building. I really enjoyed following these characters. It was an appropriate length for me. I never felt like it really dragged on, although I will say I have had a friend who did feel it drag for them, so just keep in mind, mileage may vary there. But it was great. I, like, read 200 pages of it in a day, which, if you're new here, that's not normal. That's not a thing I do. I'm like 100 pages is like a great day. So that was a really great read for me. So those are all the things. So now we need to go look at my bracket. So I'm going to have it on the screen and let's walk through it. So in the upper left, we've got Dead House Gates against Burning God. And I predicted Dead House Gates would win, And I was right. It very much won. And then below it, we had Phoenix Extravagant against Deacon King Kong. And I was right, Phoenix Extravagant won, but not by as much as I thought it would. And then we have Dead House Gates up against Phoenix Extravagant. And I'm pretty sure this is our first upset, and Dead House Gates is going to have to win this one, which I was pretty shocked at. I mean, I just expected to really like the Yoon Ha Lee standalone fantasy more than the very dense military fantasy. Like, there's a lot about Dead House Gates that's outside of my comfort zone. And now, on the other side, we had Winter's Orbit up against the Gilded Ones, and this is so close. I think it goes to the Winter's Orbit purely based on the fact that I like the ending of that book better than the Gilded Ones, but I think on average I liked the experience of reading the Gilded Ones more than Winter's Orbit. It's really hard. They are neck and neck, but Winter's Orbit is what I predicted and just edges out the Gilded Ones. And then below that, we have Machine Hood up against We Free the Stars. And if you hadn't seen in my recent Friday reads, I'm soft DNFing this one. I'm going to pick it up in the next round of Tome Topple after I've reread We Hunt the Flames. So Machine Hood obviously wins. Now, Winter's Orbit or Machine Hood, which one wins? They're both 4-star reads, and I think it's Machine Hood. I had a more consistent experience with Machine Hood than Winter's Orbit. So Machine Hood is going way farther than any of us expected, or at least me. And now we have Machine Hood versus Dead House Gates. And I think it has to go to Dead House Gates. I had a more consistent experience with Machine Hood, but I do really think that it's not a book I'm going to think about much in a couple months. I'm not going to reread it. It was a really fun, action-packed book that really helped me escape at the time that I read it. But Dead House Gates, I think I'm going to be thinking about and discussing and engaging with more. And I think for me, that's more valuable than just the quick escapism. Sometimes the quick escapism is more valuable to me, but I think in this case, it's going to have to be Dead House Gates. So I think that's who won the bracket. So nothing went as planned, but as you can see, like I said, it wasn't the best or worst reading month. It just felt like I didn't even have any 4.5-star reads. Like, the only 5-star read I had was a reread. So I'm hoping April is better because I don't know. I don't like having so many 3.5. Gosh, I even had like a 2.5-star read. Don't like it. But let me know if you did the bracket tournament, where I can find your bracket and look at it. I know some people have been sharing it in my Discord, which it's a public Discord. You can join anytime. Or if you post it on Instagram or Twitter, just let me know where to look. And also, what was your best read of the month? I need to hear everyone's best reads so I can go pick those up because I want to have more amazing favorites because I want new favorites so desperately. And that's it for this one. If you want to leave an emoji, leave an emoji that makes you think of any of the books that I've talked about. Like, I've had dragons, I've had space, we've had some classic military fantasy. Any emoji for you that represents that, or if you just want to say hello or leave a smiley face, all of that's amazing. And like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.